It was June 2025 when a Florida courtroom handed down a sentence that sent shockwaves through a stunned community. Life in prison. The man receiving it? Travis Ray Thompson, 27 years old. And his crime? An act so brutal, so utterly against everything we understand about care, it's almost impossible to grasp. Back in 2022, he didn't just end a life. He shattered the world of a 2-year-old little girl by severing her spine. This is the story of Jacklyn Schwingel, and the long, painful journey to a justice that, even in its finality, can never truly fix what was so violently broken. Justice can take a long time, sometimes years of digging through investigations, court dates, and the crushing grief of those left behind. For little Jacklyn Schwingel's family, and for a community still trying to process the horror, June 5, 2025, finally closed a painful chapter. That's the day Travis Ray Thompson was found guilty of first-degree murder. It took the jury less than 2 hours to come to their unanimous decision. Judge Barbara Kistner didn't hesitate, delivering the mandatory sentence: life behind bars. State Attorney Bill Gladson for the 5th Judicial Circuit didn't hold back, calling Thompson a monster who stole the life of an innocent child, adding that life in prison is too good for this kind of evil. This case, rooted in the tragic events of May 3, 2022 in Marion County, Florida, is a harsh look at the darkness people are capable of, and the immense responsibility of the justice system to face it. We'll walk through the heartbreaking details of Jacklyn's last days, the careful investigation that unraveled Thompson's lies, and the trial that finally made him answer for an act of unimaginable cruelty. Before her name became a headline steeped in tragedy, Jacklyn Schwingel was just Jackie, a 2-year-old girl, a bright spark for everyone who loved her. At that age, life's a whirlwind of new things: first words, wobbly steps turning into happy runs, and a never-ending capacity for love and laughter. You can just imagine the smiles she gave, the tiny hand reaching out for comfort, the pure, innocent trust she had in the adults around her. Photos show a smiling toddler, the kind of picture that should only bring warmth. Instead, it's now an image clouded by an unbearable sadness, a reminder of a life full of promise, snuffed out with such shocking brutality. 2 years old is an age of wonder, of taking in the world with wide, curious eyes. It's an age where a scraped knee is a big deal and a lullaby makes everything okay. It's an age that relies completely on the protection and care of grown-ups. For Jacklyn, that basic trust was betrayed in the worst way possible. She was her mother's child, a little girl who deserved a life of playdates, bedtime stories, and the solid security of a loving home. The little things about her personality, her favorite toys, the sound of her giggle, these are precious memories now held tight by those who cherished her, memories that are a world away from the cold, horrifying facts that would later detail her final moments in public records. To really understand the depth of the crime, you have to understand the brightness of the life that was stolen. She wasn't just a name in a case file. She was a vibrant, living, breathing little girl whose future was torn away. The community in Marion County, like any place facing such a loss, was left reeling. Any child's death is a tragedy, but the way Jacklyn died sent shock and anger far beyond her family and friends. She represented pure vulnerability, and what happened to her, the ultimate betrayal of an adult's duty. As we look into what led to her death, it's Jacklyn's stolen future, her silenced laughter, that has to stay in the front of our minds. Travis Ray Thompson was 24 back in May 2022, the ex-boyfriend of Jacklyn Schwingel's mother. On May 3, 2022, he was the one looking after 2-year-old Jacklyn. This was the day Jacklyn's life would be so horrifically cut short. The child's mother had left Jacklyn in Thompson's care while she went to work, something parents do every single day, trusting another adult. It's a trust built on the basic idea that someone, especially someone the family knows, will keep their child safe. The exact details of Thompson's relationship with Jacklyn's mother, or his past interactions with Jacklyn, aren't widely known beyond him being an ex-boyfriend. But what's terrifyingly clear is that on this particular Tuesday, the home where Jacklyn should have been safe turned into a place of unimaginable horror. Investigators say that just 25 minutes after Jacklyn's mother left for work, Thompson called her. He told her something was wrong with Jacklyn, that she wasn't responding. This phone call was the first of many actions and statements Thompson would make to try and hide the awful truth of what had happened. He was the only adult there with the child. Her well-being was entirely his responsibility. Yet, what happened under his watch wasn't an accident, not some tragic mishap, but a deliberate and brutal act of violence. The state attorney's office would later call him a monster, a word that shows just how much disgust and condemnation his actions brought out. As the investigation went on, a picture began to form of a man whose violence was aimed at the most helpless of victims. The path from being an ex-boyfriend watching a child to a convicted murderer sentenced to life in prison is a dark one, marked by lies and a shocking lack of remorse for an act that defies all human decency. The events of May 3, 2022, started an investigation that would carefully strip away Thompson's initial story to show the horrifying reality beneath. What happened to Jacklyn Schwingel in those critical minutes, alone with Travis Ray Thompson, is the hardest part of this story to hear. The details, put together by investigators and medical examiners, show an act of extreme, intentional cruelty. According to the Marion County Sheriff's Office, MCSO, Thompson physically abused Jacklyn while she was supposed to be safe with him. This abuse led to an injury so catastrophic it's hard to even say out loud. Jacklyn's spine was completely severed. Thompson's first story to the police and to Jacklyn's mother was very different. He claimed he and Jacklyn were in separate rooms when he heard a loud noise. He said he went to check on her and found her unresponsive, taking shallow breaths. This story of some unexplained accident, a sudden and mysterious injury, just wouldn't hold up against the forensic evidence. Critically, Thompson didn't immediately call 911 for emergency medical help. Instead, reports say he waited about 30 minutes for Jacklyn's mother to get home after his alarming phone call. When she got back, she found her daughter lifeless with a faint pulse and a swollen stomach. It was only then, as they started driving towards the hospital and Jacklyn's mother realized the toddler had stopped breathing altogether, that she told Thompson to call 911. Paramedics met them at a nearby business to rush Jacklyn for emergency care. The medical team at Advent Health Waterman in Tavares, Florida, where Jacklyn was taken, immediately suspected severe internal injuries, including internal bleeding. They reported possible child abuse to the Marion County Sheriff's Office and the Department of Children and Families. Despite every effort to save her, 2-year-old Jacklyn Schwingel was pronounced dead. The true extent of her injuries was laid bare by the medical examiner's office. On September 1, 2022, almost 4 months after her death, the official cause of death was released: traumatic injuries to Jacklyn's torso, specifically noting her spine was severed and there was significant internal bleeding behind her organs. The medical examiner concluded that these horrific injuries weren't from a simple fall or some sudden accident. Investigators, looking at how severe and specific the break was, figured out that Thompson had applied significant, gradual force to the victim's upper and lower body from the front with a fulcrum point on her lower back. Basically, Jacklyn's small body was bent backward, against its natural limit, with so much force that her spine snapped. This wasn't a momentary loss of control. It was a sustained, deliberate, horrific act of violence against a defenseless 2-year-old child. The very act of severing a spine implies a level of force and intent that's deeply shocking. Once Advent Health Waterman flagged suspected child abuse, the Marion County Sheriff's Office Major Crimes Unit jumped into action, launching a full investigation into Jacklyn Schwingel's death. Detectives were looking at a nightmare: a 2-year-old child dead from injuries that looked anything but accidental, and a story from her caregiver, Travis Ray Thompson, that was short on details and, as it turned out, full of lies. Thompson's claim of hearing a loud noise from another room and then finding Jacklyn unresponsive was where investigators started. He kept denying he knew how or why Jacklyn was injured, even when they confronted him with the devastating findings later on. This denial, when faced with the catastrophic injuries Jacklyn suffered while he was the only one watching her, became a major hurdle for detectives. That 30-minute delay in getting professional medical help was a huge red flag. For a child found unresponsive and barely breathing, every second counts. The choice to wait for Jacklyn's mother to come home before even trying to go to the hospital, and only calling 911 when the frantic mother, realizing her child had stopped breathing, told him to, or it all pointed to a disturbing lack of urgency, or maybe something much worse, an attempt to control the story or delay anyone finding out. The game changer in the investigation came from the meticulous work of the medical examiner's office. The findings they released on September 1, 2022, were clear and damning. The conclusion that Jacklyn's spine was severed due to significant, gradual force, essentially being bent backward until her back broke, completely blew up Thompson's vague story of an unexplained incident. This forensic evidence gave a solid, scientific basis for what investigators probably already suspected. Jacklyn was the victim of a brutal, hands-on assault. The description of the force as gradual suggests it wasn't a quick, impulsive act, but a sustained period of abuse. It painted a picture of deliberate, torturous violence. The internal bleeding behind her organs just further highlighted how severe the trauma inflicted on her tiny body was. Armed with this undeniable medical evidence, investigators brought Thompson in for another formal interview. On September 8, 2022, just a week after the medical examiner's report finalized how Jacklyn died, Travis Ray Thompson was taken into custody for more questioning. When they laid out the horrifying conclusions about how Jacklyn was killed, Thompson reportedly stuck to his story, claiming he didn't know how or why the child was murdered. His continued denials, especially when faced with such specific and gruesome medical details about an act that could only have been done by the adult present, sealed his fate. Later that day, Travis Ray Thompson, then 24, was arrested and booked into the Marion County Jail. He was charged with first-degree murder in the death of Jacklyn Schwingel. That charge, first-degree murder, meant that investigators and the prosecutor's office believed the act wasn't just intentional but also premeditated, or happened while he was committing another serious crime, like aggravated child abuse. The nearly 4 months between Jacklyn's death and Thompson's arrest shows how thorough the investigation was, making sure every piece of evidence was carefully gathered and analyzed before they laid charges. Marion County Sheriff Billy Woods would later praise his major crimes detectives for their relentless work on this heartbreaking case, saying their dedication helped get justice for an innocent child. The details of what Jacklyn went through are deeply upsetting, and they shine a light on a tragic reality that happens way too often hidden from view. Child abuse is like a silent epidemic, and its victims are the most vulnerable people we have. In 2022 alone, the year Jacklyn was killed, Florida had over 242,000 calls about child abuse and neglect, with almost 25,000 children confirmed as victims. In many of these cases, the abuser is someone the child knows. If you ever even suspect a child is being harmed or neglected, please know that your call can make a huge difference. You can report suspected child abuse by calling the Florida Department of Children and Families, DCF, Central Abuse Hotline at 1-800-96-ABUSE. That's 1-800-962-2873. You don't have to be sure, it's the job of professionals to investigate. Reporting it could save a life. After Travis Ray Thompson's arrest in September 2022, the long, tough journey through the legal system kicked off. For Jacklyn Schwingel's family and a community desperate for accountability, it would be a wait of nearly 3 years before the case finally saw its day in court. Thompson stayed in custody at the Marion County Jail while waiting for his trial. The prosecution, led by Assistant State Attorneys Amy Berndt and Sasha Kidney, carefully built their case around the damning evidence, especially the medical examiner's findings that laid out the horrific way Jacklyn died. The heart of their argument was that the injuries Jacklyn suffered, particularly the severed spine from that significant, gradual and forceful bending, could only have been inflicted by Thompson, who was the only adult caregiver at the time. His inconsistent statements, his delay in getting medical help, and his ultimate failure to give any believable explanation for Jacklyn's catastrophic injuries were all key parts of the state's case. The defense, meanwhile, had the enormous challenge of trying to disprove the overwhelming physical evidence or offer some other theory for Jacklyn's death that didn't point to Thompson. Since Thompson kept saying he had no idea how Jacklyn was injured, his defense might have tried to create doubt about exactly how or when the injuries happened, or maybe question how the medical evidence was interpreted, though the reported nature of the injuries made that an incredibly tough argument. The trial itself, which wrapped up in early June 2025, brought all the evidence, testimonies, and legal arguments out into the open courtroom. While we don't always hear about every single witness or piece of evidence from a trial, the crucial parts would have included testimony from the medical examiner who performed Jacklyn's autopsy. Their expert opinion on the cause of death and the kind of force needed to cause such injuries would have been vital. Police officers involved in the investigation would have testified about Thompson's statements, the scene, and the timeline of what happened that awful day. Jacklyn's mother may also have been called to talk about leaving Jacklyn in Thompson's care and what happened when she returned and during that frantic trip towards the hospital. The prosecution's closing arguments, as courtroom scenes suggested, likely painted a clear, painful picture of Thompson's deliberate actions and the immense suffering of the 2-year-old victim. They would have driven home the point that the evidence led to only one possible conclusion: Travis Ray Thompson, through an act of unbelievable violence, murdered Jacklyn Schwingel. After all the evidence was presented and both sides made their closing arguments, the case went to the Marion County jury. Their job was to look at the evidence, consider the law as Judge Barbara Kistner explained it, and decide if Thompson was guilty or innocent. On Wednesday, June 5, 2025, though some reports say the verdict came on the evening of June 4 with sentencing right after or on the 5th, After almost 3 long years since Jacklyn Schwingel's life was brutally taken, the jury came back with their verdict. They hadn't deliberated for long, just under 2 hours, which perhaps says a lot about how compelling and overwhelming the evidence against Travis Ray Thompson was. The court clerk read the verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. For Jacklyn's loved ones and really for the whole community that had followed this horrific case, that word guilty must have brought a rush of complicated emotions, deep relief, some sense of vindication, but also the constant pain of their irreplaceable loss. The conviction confirmed that the evidence was undeniable, that a jury of his peers saw Thompson's actions for what they were: the malicious and intentional taking of a helpless child's life. Right after the verdict, Judge Barbara Kistner moved to sentencing. In Florida, for first-degree murder, the sentencing options are often very clear-cut. For Travis Ray Thompson, the sentence was life in prison. There would be no chance of parole, no chance for him to ever walk free again after the terrible things he did. He was 27 years old when he was sentenced. The reaction from the officials who worked to bring Thompson to justice was quick and strong. State Attorney Bill Gladson of the 5th Judicial Circuit released a powerful statement saying, "This monster stole the life of an innocent child, and today the justice system made sure he will never walk free again. Life in prison is too good for this kind of evil." His words really captured the outrage and disgust many felt over how brutal the crime was. Marion County Sheriff Billy Woods also commented on the outcome, saying how proud he was of the relentless work of his major crimes detectives. He stated, "Their dedication helped secure justice for an innocent child. I also want to thank State Attorney Bill Gladson and his team for delivering a guilty verdict. In Marion County, we protect our children, and we hold those who harm them accountable." These statements highlighted how committed local law enforcement and the justice system are to getting justice for victims like Jacklyn, no matter how disturbing the case. The life sentence, while it can't bring Jacklyn back or erase the trauma, represents the full force of the law, recognizing how precious her life was and how depraved Thompson's actions were. It means that such violence against the most vulnerable people in society will be met with the harshest penalties. For a community shaken by such an awful crime, the finality of the sentence offered a sad kind of closure, an assurance that the man responsible for Jacklyn Schwingel's death would be permanently removed from society. The jury's quick decision and the immediate life sentence spoke volumes about how clear his guilt was in this profoundly tragic case. Travis Ray Thompson's conviction and life sentence brought a legal end to Jacklyn Schwingel's case, but the impact of this tragedy will keep being felt in Marion County and far beyond. A crime this awful, involving the brutal murder of a defenseless toddler by her caregiver, leaves a lasting scar on a community's soul. It makes us face the darkest sides of human behavior and shows just how vital it is to be vigilant in protecting children. The case is a horrifying reminder of how common child abuse is. Often, like in Jacklyn's case, the abuser is someone the child knows and the family trusts. Statistics from Florida in 2022 showed that in confirmed cases of child maltreatment, 29% of perpetrators were not parents or had an unknown relationship to the child, while 71% were parents. These numbers are a harsh truth that danger to children can often come from inside their supposed circle of safety. Jacklyn's story, while extremely brutal, is part of a larger, deeply worrying pattern of violence against children. In 2022, Florida saw 86 child deaths due to abuse or neglect, an increase from the year before. Each of those numbers is a stolen life, a shattered family, and a community in mourning. This case also shows just how crucial medical professionals are in spotting and reporting suspected child abuse. The staff at Advent Health Waterman, by recognizing the signs of internal trauma and alerting authorities, started the investigation that ultimately led to Thompson's conviction. Their actions were absolutely vital. Similarly, the careful work of the medical examiner's office was essential in uncovering the truth of how Jacklyn died, giving the undeniable evidence that countered Thompson's lies. For the community of Marion County, this case is a painful chapter. Even as the area grows and new families move in, an event like this casts a long shadow, reminding everyone of the need for community strength in protecting its youngest and most vulnerable. Local efforts and awareness campaigns about child abuse prevention feel even more urgent after such a tragedy. It reinforces the message that protecting children is everyone's job. But beyond the statistics, the court proceedings, and the community impact, there's the lasting memory of a little girl named Jacklyn. A child who loved, laughed, and deserved to grow up. The justice that was delivered, while important, is a sad victory. It can't bring back what was lost. Travis Ray Thompson's life sentence ensures he can't harm anyone else, but it doesn't fill the hole left by Jacklyn's absence. Her legacy, tragically, is now tied to this horrific crime, but it should also push us towards greater awareness, stronger protections for children, and a shared commitment to making sure no other child suffers such an unthinkable fate. May her memory, despite the darkness around her death, somehow inspire a more watchful and protective world for all children. The life sentence given to Travis Ray Thompson in June 2025 closed a nearly 3-year chapter of deep pain and the search for justice for 2-year-old Jacklyn Schwingel. His act of severing the spine of a defenseless child in his care is still a crime that shocks the conscience, a brutal reminder of the depths of human cruelty. The careful investigation by the Marion County Sheriff's Office and the dedicated prosecution by the State Attorney's Office made sure that despite Thompson's lies, the truth of his horrific actions came out. While the legal process is over and the person responsible will spend the rest of his life in prison, the loss of Jacklyn is immeasurable and permanent. No sentence can ever truly match the value of a life taken so brutally and so soon. This case leaves us with a heavy responsibility: to remember Jacklyn, to stay vigilant against child abuse in all its forms, and to support the systems and a community commitment that aim to protect the most vulnerable among us. The justice served in that Marion County courtroom was for Jacklyn. May her name not be forgotten, and may her story fuel our shared determination to create a safer world for every child.